Thank you. Right, now is the part of the evening where we move over to questions and answers, so please don't be shy in coming forward with your questions for our two speakers. So, any hands please?
Can I just backtrack to Michael's question to you? How are we going to win this? We're going to win this, we can win this nationally, we can win it internationally.
Yeah.
And you are save our rights. We need to know our rights. They need to teach us our rights. So we need to go back to common law, God's law, natural law.
Yeah.
We need to know the Magna Carta, we need to know the Bill of Rights. Because you can challenge them where it hurts the most, which is in the pocket. Okay? And there's ways and means. I'm doing it myself, and don't get me wrong, I'm not an expert on common law. I'm studying common law, I'm sort of natural law, I like to call it. I've stopped paying all my bills. Okay? Because I've found out how to challenge them, and with the right documents to challenge them with. Okay? They stopped teaching common law in 1963 in universities. We could guess the reason why. But if everybody done that, they would have no income. They wouldn't be getting income. The energy bills, I'm not paying. Okay? Council tax, I'm not paying. I'm challenging the DVLA at the moment. Okay? These are all corporate businesses. They're all money-making businesses. Okay? They've all got what they call a DUNS number, from Duns and Bradshaw, where they're registered. You can also support yourself by making yourselves limited companies. Because they can't do, for a start, these corporate businesses, it's unlawful for a corporate business to do a contract with a man or a woman. Don't bring human into it. We're men and we're women. Okay? Sovereigns of the earth. Going back to your sovereignty, you said about the sovereignty. This is what we need to do. We've paid for it all. We've paid for it all by our weight in gold from our birthright that they took from our weight in gold. And they put in an act called the Sesquiv Act. Okay? Some people say it was in the 1500s, some people say it was 1666. I tend to go with 1666 because of the figures in it. But we need to know our right. We need to know our rights. And then we can save them.
Well, firstly, I just want to commend you for being proactive, because it's when I've looked at a lot of the common law stuff, and it is such a complex piece of work, and to really be able to protect yourself, you have to know it inside out. And it's one of those things where it's absolutely beneficial. As far as I'm concerned, like you could use the Ten Commandments as the basis of all of our human rights. It's all kind of in there as well. And when it comes to the Magna Carta and everything else, it was still made by this system. It was written in the system, and it's all very valuable, and there's a lot to be done. But one of the things that we've got to remember is that the people of this nation have been put in positions where the governments can sanction them, they can make it nearly impossible for them to live, and they're working jobs, they're overstretched, they don't have communities, they don't have spare time, they're struggling with overwhelm at all times. They're completely traumatised by the last 2 years. So not many people have the ability to do the research and the work that you've done. So we have to keep it as simple and as easy and accessible as possible for all, to bring them in, and then, Save Our Rights, I try and, explain as much as I can, and also recognising that, while we might not agree with legislation, unfortunately they can enforce a lot of it, and so we've just got to find that balance and recognise where people are at, we do find that the easier you make it, the more engagement you have, but the harder it is, and it's so complex that people aren't ready for it yet. But do I think it should be something that everybody should know? Absolutely. Yeah. But are the people ready, like the wider people out there, ready for it? Not yet, sadly. So it's just finding that balance.
You could promote tax control, though, couldn't you? You have so many followers.
I can't. I'll go straight to jail. People, this is one of the things, is people ask me to go, oh, why don't you just say we do this or do that? Well, it's like, well, I'll just get arrested and go straight to jail. So you're asking a lot of me.
Well, when we were rejected from other venues, it was like whack-a-mole. This guy was made absolutely sure we were going to run this event tonight. And thank you so much to you all for coming. What Louise has just said reminds me of what I felt at one of the venues. I actually felt criminalised when I was told that this event had to be cancelled. And then I remembered that actually we have got a criminal, Louise, so there we go.
I'd just like to say, if there's anyone undercover here, it's nothing to do with me. So. Okay.
Next question.
So someone in the corner who's had their hand up for a while? No?
Everybody's tired of it, but then I think us fighters are tired of it as well. And because it's ended in the media, it's not ended. It's like they want that, do you know what I mean? They want us to forget about it, and we still need to fight this, do you know what I mean? Because it's like, we really, really do.
Yeah, thank you for that. Who's going to the rally in London tomorrow?
Yeah.
Yay! Now, on that topic about is it all over? No, it's certainly not all over. I'm an officer of the Workers of England Union, and I'm going to leave this flyer out if anyone wants to join. And the mainstay of our business at the moment is protecting workers from tyranny. And the public message is that mandates have been dropped. But anyone who actually watched Sajid Javid in the House of Commons when he made this climb down, and his real sort of snarling kind of speech that he made, he said that it's a professional responsibility. Also, those workers who we were representing, and I'm so glad to say we managed to rescue hundreds of jobs. But what can those workers do? They can't get promoted. They can't move to another job in their own organisation. They can't get another job elsewhere. This is a real story of what's going on. But the public don't notice. The public think there is no mandate anymore. This is a tyranny that we're up against. So no, it hasn't gone away, and that's why we need to fight it. That's why we need people like Louise to carry on organising rallies, even if she gets another £20,000 fine, because we need it. We need to get out there. We need to make our voices known.
Not paying it, have you?
No. But just on that note, I want to commend Workers for England Union because they have done a phenomenal job. So I'd like to give them a round of applause. They're an absolute lifeline to a lot of people, and I agree, vigilance is really important, and I think keeping on having those conversations with people wherever we can. One of the things that's coming up is the government's inquiry is being run by some delightful people who have been involved in some really other great inquiries, such as the 7/7 bombings, Princess Diana's death, and child abuse in systems. But I'm sure this time they're going to do a great job. But what we are doing is we have gathered, and we've got legal representation, and we'll be submitting a significant amount of evidence from our side. Whether they listen or they don't, we will make sure that our side and your side and our voices are heard in that inquiry, even if it's then dismissed. So we are still doing that as well. And we will therefore be able to publish it all and make it, and the word will be spread, which will be really helpful to us all. So yeah, we are still working on it. It's not gone away.
Thank I'm going to try and give everyone a chance to speak at least once who's got their hand up. So we're going to go to Quinton over there first, and then the chap with the beard at the back. So over to you, Quinton.
And Nigel. Nigel, come to the front. Alright, and then
Is that Farage?
Definitely not. Did any of you shed any light on the Fabian Society?
Ah, well, now that's a very interesting question, Quentin, and I'm always embarrassed when I go to get into discussions about global movements, because I always realise how little I actually know compared to some. It's amazing when you go to Stanley Park. There are people that just want to talk about the kind of social, psychological impact, and that's fine. But you always get some. I mean, some people think they're like pub bores, you know. Sometimes some of them are like competing with each other to see who's gone furthest down the rabbit hole. But there's no doubt that there's been a big awakening over the last 2 years into the people who are really pulling the strings. So the Fabians, I'm going to answer that question very briefly by saying that the person asking the question, Quentin, good chap, he knows a lot more about Fabians than I do. But what I will say is that there are two organisations, and just there are many organisations that this could relate to, but there's two organisations that I've got to know a lot more about over the last 2 years. And one is the Freemasons, that I never really paid much attention to, and obviously David Icke has really focused on them. But there's another organisation which probably seems to most people to be quite relatively benign and sort of less controversial. But I think there's a very dark side to them. And I'm not saying there's a dark side to all Freemasons. I'm not saying there's a dark side to all members of this organisation either, but it's something that we should be aware of, and that is the Quakers. The Quakers, I believe, and I'm going to be quite controversial here, and I'll say again, I know that most people involved in the Quakers are doing it for good deeds, just like the Freemasons. People go into the Freemasons genuinely to help, to support local things in their community. But my belief is that both the Freemasons and the Quakers are Satanists. Well, I believe that almost everything the government's doing, almost everything that the institutions of society is doing, is against. I sat on an NHS ethics committee for 11 years, and all the standards that we maintained have been ditched, unceremonially ditched. This is the world that we've been living in for the last 2 years. All the standards of biomedical ethics, all employment rights, yeah, they've just been ditched. All things about how we treat children, ditched, yeah.
It's all just brainwashed.
Because this has been a tremendously successful indoctrination, brainwashing, induced mass hysteria. That's what we're up against.
Yes, so if you have a water leak in your house, do you spend your time bailing out the water, or do you focus on the cause of the leak? Because that's what we need to do, is focus 100% on the cause of all of this, instead of bailing out the water. And there's one group that's constantly avoided whenever we talk about any of this, and it's the group that murdered 60 million Russians last century, and has had the power somehow in this world to cover it all up for all these years. Zionists, let's call them, Bolsheviks, and we all know who they are, and people are petrified to speak about them. And until we do, 11 out of the 12 Gulag bosses were, let's call them Zionists, because we're not allowed to say who they actually were. They committed one of the greatest genocides in history, and it's all been covered up. Who has the power to do that but them? And Solzhenitsyn said, the fact that they've been able to cover it up is proof in itself that the world's media is in the hands of the perpetrators. Why do people keep avoiding it? We've got to stop being frightened about this. Look what's happening to Palestine now at the hands of the same people. It's just absolutely atrocious. And they control the media, they control the pharmaceutical companies now, and
And I really liked your analogy that you started with. And frankly, I don't think we should be bailing out the water or fixing the leak. We need to move house. So, there's I forget the name, but there's an amazing quote which is if you want change, you don't fight the system. You create something new and attract people to that. And there is no fighting this, because but attraction rather than promotion. What we have is attractive. It's one of the reasons why the events in London are so well attended, is because they're so attractive. They're high vibe, they're high energy. We're not going in there angry and fighting. We're not going, you're all awful. We're there going, we love each other, we love freedom, and we're standing in that. And that is attractive to people. And we just remove ourselves from their power and control. That is the best way to resist. Because once you fight, what you resist persists. Fighting against something gives it energy and it makes it push back. Turn away, walk away, and you can. And that's my stance. There's some things I feel like I have to fight on because, like the human rights act of thing. Because actually, if those things come through, then it makes fighting really difficult. But ultimately, at Save Our Rights, we want to just create something completely new that we can all just move to. That's the ultimate aim, but it's finding that balance between current events and what will hinder us being able to do that. Like one of the late amendments to the policing bill, for example, was serious disruption order notices, where they could just place injunctions on anybody, preventing anybody organising any event. Like that, if that had gone through, we'd have been really screwed. But it didn't, because we defeated the government on that, so that was wonderful. But they still got some things through. So love and faith and community is resistant to all of that. If we're actually working together, then we can resist it all. So, yeah.
Yay.
I'll pass over to the chap in the cap again.
So at the start, Louise, you were mentioning, and I remember in 2008 when we had the recession, is going to cripple the economy. Right, because they're just printing money. Who's paying for this money? It's a never-ending financial system. The fiat currency is going to go flat on its arse. We need to create something outside of that system, like you say, coming out of that system and starting a new system as that one collapses. Not the bringer of doom, I'm just stating a fact. That's what they want.
Absolutely. They're printing money, but it's all make-believe. But this is something that we're again looking at. We're looking at how to set up credit unions. These are cooperative banks that are owned by the people, not by bankers, and they can't be accessed by the bankers. From what we can gather, that's probably the best solution for us, and allow people to store whatever type of valued goods they've got, whether that's silver, gold, currency. This is something that we're looking into. It's a complex process and requires a lot of work, but yeah, we'll let you know how we get on, and yeah, it's something we really believe in, because I come from a long line of cooperative owners. My granddad set up the first ever cooperative factory. My dad has owned many cooperatives. We believe in co-ownership, so it is something to look into. So if anybody wants to help set up a cooperative, well, let me know.
Yes, and I apologise. I'm actually going to return to a previous question because I realise I gave a very inadequate answer, but just very quickly, is on the Fabians, because it is very relevant to today, the situation we've got today. And the Fabians were eugenicists, okay? They may have been a very strong, in many ways a positive, part of the foundation of the labour movement. So they did, I'm sure they did lots of good, right? But they were also eugenicists, and the playwright George Bernard Shaw, a plaque was unveiled in his name at the University of, oh goodness, which what's the university? London School of Economics, yeah? London School of Economics, a plaque was unveiled by none other than Sir Anthony Blair, and it was to George Bernard Shaw. Now, I thought this was remarkable. I work for King's College London, just around the corner from where this plaque was unveiled. That at the same time that was happening, some very famous people were their names were being ripped down from universities. So, for example, Sir Francis Galton at University College London, Lord Carey's picture on the Wall of Fame on the Strand, King's College London. So, people who had become politically incorrect posthumously were being where the cancel culture was really getting more and more rampant year on year. And yet Sir George Bernard Shaw was to be celebrated. And Sir George Bernard Shaw was one of the leading Fabians. Do you know this, Quentin, don't you? Because he knows far more about the Fabians than me. He's just testing me out. Sir George Bernard Shaw was the inventor of nothing less than the gas chamber. He invented the gas chamber that was used by the Germans to murder all those people in the Second World War.
Also a eugenicist. I went to UCL. Galton was a big-time eugenicist. That's
Yes, indeed, and I'm not for a moment saying that other characters whose names, statues were pulled down, we're all good guys. But isn't it funny how this playwright is still celebrated? That Tony Blair unveiled this plaque to this great progressive, because that's what Tony Blair called him, a great progressive. But he was a eugenicist. He invented the gas chamber. And he didn't just invent the gas chamber as in a kind of whimsical way. He believed that there are too many useless eaters. And that's exactly the culture that we've got now with the globalists, is it not? They believe there are too many useless eaters. And this will be something which will get more and more apparent as automation creeps in, so that there are fewer jobs and more people on universal basic income. This is going to be one of the big challenges that we face in the future. Thank you.
Okay, chat here at the front.
How are we going to wake people up?
I think the cost of living is going to be the one. It's quite an easy one. People will take action when it affects them. You know, that's the way the majority of people work. Cost of living is going to be, it's outrageous.
I know what you're saying, but I feel like they've all been programmed.
It's going to be hard. The thing is, I think some of them won't ever wake up. They won't. But will they be attracted to, if they come in and they start hearing what we're saying and we offer them an alternative, because you've got to remember, this system doesn't actually work for anybody.
So you're saying that so when things get really, really bad, right? If we have an alternative economy, then they'll join it.
Yeah, some people will never know what we know, and do we need everybody to know? Because some of it's pretty traumatic. Like, they literally couldn't do it, and we are in a minority. And do you know what? Like, that's okay. They can still be willing to take the actions that are needed to, because once this cost of living happens, it's going to affect them. So they'll come, and if they are willing to take the action that's needed to create the new society and the new system and join us in that, then we welcome them with open arms, no matter how much they know. Even if we think there's no design on how much people should know. Just focused on keeping me and mine out of the system. I've got 4 children. which is a full-time job in itself. And you know, we don't have a TV. My kids have never been to a state school, and that's like I knew I had to keep my kids out of the system, and I thought that was enough, you know. And I didn't really look, you know. I kind of knew, and I'm never shocked, and I never just like when I hear new things about lots of stuff that Neil's talked about tonight. Lots of it I didn't know, but you know, it doesn't take much for me to agree and understand. But I didn't go researching myself. I didn't feel like I needed to know it all. I just knew what I needed to do to keep my children safe, and that's what I focused on. So we can't expect everyone to know everything, but we can still welcome them with open arms.
Yes, and just an addition to those wise words from Louise is that one of the most famous quotes from Mark Twain, it's easier to fool a man than it is to convince a man he's been fooled.
Yeah.
Okay, the chap in the corner.
It's a very quick question. Louise was mentioning earlier on that the cost of living increases would be quite an easy sell to people. A lot of that is actually down to net zero. So we'll be going up against that. I just wondered what your feelings were about taking on the whole green climate change thing, because that seems to be integral about food prices, energy prices, and so many other cost of living issues.
Yes, absolutely. And part of our briefing actually has some really great papers on how the focus on getting to net zero is actually an economic disaster and is going to, you know, disadvantage the poor, and it's just, you know, it's just a disaster for all of the most vulnerable people as per usual. And that panic is meaning that people aren't making sensible choices, you know. I believe that, you know, there is absolutely, what would be ideal is for the UK to be self-sufficient. You know, we could absolutely be self-sufficient in terms of electricity generation, and we have gas up in the North Sea as well. Because while we're reliant on importing it from outside, you know, we're beholden to their prices, and you know, really that's what I want to push for, is that we become completely independent. And if that means using like green renewables, then fine, let's do it. But there is a big part of our problem is they just don't invest. You know, we've got enough turbines in this country to provide enough electricity for all of the houses, except we have no storage, so on a windy day we don't benefit from it. And then our national grid leaches out 54% of the electricity that passes through it. So we actually just lose half of it. So, whereas if we were fully independent, then we'd have much more control over everything. So I think that's what we're really focusing on.
And have you been prepping, Louise?
Does it show? I've done so much research, I've had to learn so much new stuff.
The chap in the striped shirt.
Just two quick comments. If there's anybody here who works in agriculture, we've set up a new King's Britain farming group because the government wants to pay farmers off to stop farming, and farmers, we think, want to grow food. So if there's anybody here who's involved in agriculture or food who's interested, let me know. The gentleman here might be pleased to know that there is a new political party awaiting registration with the Electoral Commission called the Climate Change Party, because the Green Party isn't extreme enough.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Joking aside, the party, Nigel Farage is going for a hat trick of new political movements that just take the scene by storm. It's actually really, really difficult to set up a new political party. It's almost impossible. It's very, very difficult. But there are some successes from time to time. And Nigel Farage has seen this opportunity to tackle this poverty-creating net zero crisis. And you can see the inflation is going up, it's getting rampant now. Isn't it interesting that Nigel Farage and Julia Hartley-Brewer and some others who were going to speak in Bolton, that event was shut down. Now, I think they found another venue, but that just shows, doesn't it, how much the powers that be don't want us to talk about these things. They don't want us to criticise the climate change scam. They want us just to be obedient, just watch our TV. You know, there's that great white rose sticker of a policeman with a baton, you know, hitting the protesters saying, go home and watch the fucking news. That's what they want.
Go on, Tony.
I'd just like to say, we all need to grow up our products and say no to everything.
Yeah.
Say no to
Just say no.
Just say no.
Have the courage to say no. The power of no.
We have a right to be free. We have a right to live. We have a right to.
We are sovereign beings.
have
Declaration of sovereignty.
We need to take back our ownership, because they sold our ownership when we was born, when our mums and dads signed our birth certificates. They signed it over to the government. Okay? It's all under admiralty law. This come under natural law. Stand up, become a man, don't become a listener, take all your titles away from yourselves, and say no.
I'm going to be contrary here. I don't think you should say no to anything. I think you should say yes to what you want.
Oh yeah.
So you say yes to freedom, yes to standing in my right, yes to standing in my power. That is what we say yes to. We don't say no, we don't give them the time of day, we don't buy into it, we don't even acknowledge it. We live in our truth. I just said yes to walking around breathing freely. There's no need to say no. And once we say no, the universe doesn't hear no. It doesn't hear the prefix. Like, whenever you do political campaigning, you should never say no to anything. You say what you want.
Yes.
Only ever say what you want. As soon as you say no, then you're just reinforcing the message, because people don't hear the prefix. So if you say no tax, they just hear tax. So you say yes to financial freedom.
Yeah. Yeah, and this is why. Yeah, I think that's very true. And this is why they can portray people as anti this or anti that. Whereas actually we want to always be on the positive step, pro freedom.
Yeah.
Okay, Quinton.
I just want to know why England hasn't got its own parliament and every other country has.
Say that again?
England hasn't got its own parliament.
Well, I think we'll need to book you for another event, Quinton. Because we're slightly going outside of the scope there, and I know it's a topic of great importance to you. So in Quentin Street, there's a couple of Ukrainian flags, and I think there was a Canadian flag for a while, but Quentin's got one of these like stereotypical St. George's cross things going on in his streets. I think, though, to answer it more seriously, I think there is a real problem now with our whole democratic political structure. I have to admit that I was very much a supporter of the royal family until very recently. When the Trudeau sent in the stormtroopers to brutally assault that peaceful protest in Ottawa, what did the Queen say? When New Zealand did something similar to the protesters in Wellington, what did the Queen say? When Dan Andrews brutalised the state of Victoria in Australia and had the most repressive regime perhaps anywhere in the world, what did the Queen say? Now, I know the EU referendum is a controversial subject, but given that we had a vote on the EU membership and that the verdict was to leave the EU, and when the establishment tried its very hardest to stop that, what did the Queen say? I believe she had power that she could have used, and it's become quite clear that either she...
So could Elon Musk the comment as well. Sorry.
Yeah, and where was Jordan
Do you not know
Peterson?
about that?
Where was Jordan Peterson at the Ottawa protest? What happened? Why didn't he go and speak there? Why didn't he go and speak there? You've got to think about all these people who say they're on our side, but what are they really doing? And I always supported the royal family because I thought they were a continuity in all the crises, and I had a great respect for the Queen. But I have to say that now I believe she is reigning in dishonour.
We're going to go to Michael first of all.
On that point there, I served for 22 years until early last year. I honestly would have died for her. Honestly. Okay, I thought it was illegal, dodgy bloody laws in her name. Okay, I've seen colleagues have limbs blown off them. Sorry. The moment she called me selfish.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You dare call me selfish? I thought bloody shit was in your name.
Yeah. He's going to start crying in a minute. Take it.
Sorry.
It's all right.
He's going to start crying.
Was there a question or? There's a question over there.
Oh, yes. Okay, well, I'm sure we all thank Michael for his service, a really brave man, and he's done a lot for us. I think David, you had it before, the guy at the head.
There just seems to be one thing that's totally out of our control, and that's the way the government spends our money. Wouldn't we see that changing? How can that be changed? Because we have there's no, for someone who does their own taxes, we have to do our own accounts, we have to show every, dot every T, dot every I. We don't get anything from the government saying, well, here's a spreadsheet of what we spent this year. It's just, there's no control, like 39 billion on track and trace. That's what they've said. What is 39 billion? It's just a figure. It's just a number.
Yeah.
Oh, it's absolutely disgraceful. Like, the reason they don't give us their accounts is because they don't want to show that they got a whole load of the money from Saudi. They don't want to. They can't justify where they've got the money from. They can't justify where it's going. So therefore, they keep it hidden. Absolutely. Any sort of future system that has any sort of national services, of which, because people go, oh, I don't want governance, and no, there shouldn't be governance, but there will have to be systems that serve the people, but it has to be accountable. Every penny should be accounted for, and there are countries that do it, and our country is not one of them, but that's because they don't want us to see, and it's an absolute disgrace. In my recent campaign prep, I have been working with an ex-Treasury economist, and he was hilarious. He was like, oh yeah, that measure sounds great. It'll only cost 2.5 billion, and that's not much. And I'm like, is it not? And he's like, no.
It's like any figure, they just throw out.
They think
that's going to cost 100 million. That's going to cost this.
And according to Treasury economy, that can be accounted for quite easily. So, our campaign briefing is fully costed by this economist and approved by him, and it says, because apparently 2.5 billion is nothing to them. So, yeah, accountability is absolutely necessary in any future society.
Yeah, and I think we should admire your new project, Louise, but I'm afraid to say that I believe that the governments of the world who are kind of acting now as puppets of their globalist masters, they want economic carnage. They want economic destruction. They want to bankrupt countries, and they're going to continue to do that with net zero. They're going to continue to do that with their contrived conflict in Ukraine.
The chap by the bar, did you have a question? Yeah.
I was just going to defend your piece. If
you don't mind, he has come out and recorded a video with a message to the truckers. I think he's been quite slow in doing it. He admits he's been vaccinated, which I think he regrets now. And I think he's realising what's going on. I've got a lot of respect for it, because I think it's helped a lot of people and cut through a lot of the crap that we have to put up with.
Yes, good question. Does anyone here follow Russell Brand? And let me ask a question, and this is a genuine question, because I don't know what to think. But I'm going to ask you a question, so stop booing and hissing, because some people are nodding. Let's get a sense of the room, because I need this room, please, to give me some kind of guidance on this. So, who here thinks that Russell Brand is genuinely a good guy for our cause? Right? And who thinks something opposite?
I do. Yeah, he put out a video the other day saying that maybe we need a global government.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he did. And, you know, it's that thing, these people will come and they'll say a lot of good things, but then it means that people will keep listening to them, and then they can change the narrative once they've got people hooked. For me, Russell Brand was a big no the day that he released a book using the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous to make money. That was made by free people and given away freely with love and service, and he made money from something that he took, and that was just despicable and outrageous, and anybody who does that can't be supported in my book.
There we go.
Brian Stone test as well.
He did, we were outside.
Anyone who hasn't asked a question before? Was there some hands up over there? No? Okay. Over here.
Just a quick one. So the powers that be, we are actually dead entities.
Yeah.
I think we get to the age of 7, if we don't claim something, we're actually a dead entity to them. And I've been given a list of 7 things that I've got to send off to certain people to bring myself back into a live entity. And if they don't respond within 40 days, then you have to give an affidavit and carry on like that. It's the same with common law, it's the same stuff.
Does that beating heart not do it?
You've got to bring yourself back into a live human being. It's a complex thing.
I mean, I'd say that beating heart of yours.
Does it, David? I'd say the beating heart. We're alive. It doesn't matter what they say. It doesn't matter whether they think we're a living entity or not. You know, we just prove them wrong.
And I get that, I know that, but by their standards.
By their standards, you know, well, who wants to stand by their standards? Like, you know, I agree. It's one of those things. You can we're either standing out of it, or we're like trying to work it with them, and it's a really hard balance, because at times we have to work within it, and at other times, and we're in this hideous in-between phase, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. We can't quite escape fully, but you know, we're leaning this way. It's going to be good.
Louise?
Yeah?
Just a quick question. I know you've got a little amount of money and things. How do they, because they're acting on acts,
Yeah.
nothing was actually made law about protesting, from what I understand. So how can the police charge you under a non-law? They're acting on an act that isn't a statute.
So it was, you know, I've been charged under the Health Regulations 2020, which is a statutory instrument of the Public Health Act 1984, which, you know, by any reasonable standards means beyond the reach of power. However, when that was appealed in the High Court, Justice Swift, who used to be a former government QC, said, "Oh no, I don't need to look at that evidence because I've seen it's true on the news." So he went with the BBC over the evidence presented in front of him. It's all this is the thing is, yes, I agree with you. I think that piece of legislation is the most farcical thing I've ever seen. I don't agree with it, I don't stand under it, I don't believe in it. However, you know, they can say that I owe them this much money. They can say that I'm meant to pay them back £5 a week for the next 79.5 years. You know, and they could, if I don't pay it, we're appealing it as well because it's the most ridiculous amount. So that's going to the Crown Court. But we appealed it and they went, oh, that trial's not happened. And we're like, well, that's the other trial. Get your shit together. They can't even organise their own trials. But yeah, it's just nonsense. But the thing is, eventually, they could send around enough policemen that could overpower me and put me in prison, whether I agree with it or not. And that's the problem, is laws are just words on paper. No matter where they're put. You know, I could stand up today and say, right, the law is that everybody has to wear purple. I could write it down, put a fancy heading, and that is as valid as it is given power. And as valid as enforceable as it is. As far as I'm concerned, no law trumps another. But it's what is enforceable, and this is the thing, they have got the power to enforce these things, and therefore, we have to, whether we agree with it or not, we have to accept that they can do that. They could send enough police officers around to take me out of my house and send me to jail, whether I like it or not. So it's not about whether we agree with it or not, it's about looking at what their potential, the potential consequences for our actions of not adhering to it are, and whether we're willing to accept those consequences. My dad and my granddad have both gone to prison for protesting in the past, and my dad kind of said, he went, I think you'll be all right, love. You know, just get your head down, it'll only be a few weeks. And I was like, well, thanks for the great parental advice, Dad. So, who knows? You know, if we're willing to accept the consequences on the basis of what they will do, knowing that what they believe is right, then we can do what we like, and that's it. You know, whether we agree or not is irrelevant, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think as we're coming towards the end of the evening, maybe just time for one or two more questions, if there's anyone sort of been turning at the bit for a while, but doesn't actually have to. Okay, yeah, just over there.
What is actually the end game? What is the end result? What do they see happening to society in the next 30 to 50 years? Are we going to be enslaved? Or are we going to be... Because you said enslaved at the end of your comment, of your speech. So what, you know, that's the question I get asked as someone who's
well, if you cast your mind back to about March 2020, and he's kind of faded away now out of attention, but one of the first most strident critics of the regime was Lord Sumption. I don't know if you remember him, yeah. And Lord Sumption said, and he's kind of gone quiet, but Lord Sumption said is, people cannot even begin to realise just how serious the situation is. And he was careful with his words, but my guess is that he saw that this was a great coup against the people, against our conventions of democracy and individual liberty, and so on. So where are we going? I think that there is the danger that we end up the night with some really horrible dystopian vision. But let's just say what that dystopia is. And, you know, we still have soft skeptics like, for example, Toby Young and Julia Hartley-Brewer, and indeed Alan Miller of the Together Foundation, who let us down. He was supposed to be speaking tonight. And do you know why he pulled out? Because this man put as a subtitle, The Great Reset.
Really?
And he said, I'm having nothing to do with that conspiracy theory.
Really?
But the thing is that they're hiding, as I said in my speech, they're hiding in plain sight. You know, the World Economic Forum, who have now actually deleted loads of their stuff on the internet, but they were saying quite clearly, one of the things that they took down from the internet, just to answer your question with one word, is where do they want to go with this? And the answer is transhumanism.
Yeah.
Now, I remember going to the first rally I went to. I remember Louise was there on the stage in her miniskirt, and there was this really glamorous-looking woman, blonde-haired woman who you know as Kate Shemarani, and there was a rather tramp-like, almost octogenarian-looking character of Piers Corbyn up on the stage, and Kate was really kind of taking over the show, wasn't she? As she does. And she was going on and on about transhumanism. And occasionally she'd go on to other tangents like fluoride and that sort of thing. But she's really, and I'd never heard of this before. And I have to say that Kate is not everyone's cup of tea. And she does go on and on a bit too much, and she does it in a way which doesn't always attract people. It kind of repels people, I think, sometimes. But I think the arguments that she made way back in summer 2020, almost everything has come true, or is now obviously going to come true unless we do something about it. So that is the danger. That is what we're facing unless we can stop it. It's globalists who want total control of the world population and resources. They will want to bring in a kind of systematic eugenics. They will want to use AI. They'll want people plugged up to the internet so that they can control our passions, emotions, and our moods, and so on. It really is quite dystopian. But I think I really don't want to leave this on a negative message, because I think we've heard from Louise tonight a much more positive message, is that we can still we have our destiny in our own hands. You know, there is so much we can do. There's so much we can do. And I'm just looking forward to going to another London rally tomorrow, where I'll be walking with tens of thousands of like-minded people who are all campaigning for freedom!
Absolutely. And I think, where is it going? Well, they want it to go somewhere dark, you know, and I think it's probably even darker than we can imagine. Where, you know, even probably the current alive people who are part of it, you know, I think if it was allowed to carry on, it would go darker than even they could imagine. But we're the light, and light trumps all darkness, you know. Dark cannot put out light. It can't. Light always wins. So, you know, that's where they want it to go. They are in the darkness, and misery loves company. Is frankly how I see it. But you know what? Light's way more fun. So, you know, always be mindful of your words. Where is it going? It's going to the light. They want the darkness, but we're saying no. No, we're not saying no. We're saying yes to the light. Gosh, even I do it sometimes.
But it's been a really wonderful evening, and I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap up pretty much soon before we get thrown out. I'd just like to say a couple of things before we do. It's a bit of a call out, a plea, if you like. We have quite an active Rebels on Roundabouts group in Bexhill, and we've done protests in Bexhill and Hastings and in Eastbourne, and there's quite a few of us here. If anyone would like to take part in that, please come and see us on this table here, and we've got, so you can take name and details. We'd be happy to have you along. Secondly, another plea, call out. I'm sure many of you know Katie Joe of the Hastings Co-op and UK column, and we're hoping she's going to come and speak at a future event for us. We'd like this to become a series, but on her behalf, she's forming a freedom choir, which is a nice uplifting note to try and raise the vibration. And she would like anyone who's interested, it doesn't matter how bad they sing, as long as you can sing in the bath, you'll be welcome. So likewise, if you would like to come up here as well, we could take anyone's names for that and pass them on to Katie Joe.
I just want to say thank you. I think, thank you to Roger and thank you to Niall for putting this on, you know. Big thank you. And yeah, thank you for inviting me along and letting me be part of, and you know, thank you for just an amazing discussion, great questions, and I've really enjoyed myself, and I hope you have too.